Welcome back to BLOCKTV, and this is Crypto Crunch. Today we're joined from Helsinki by finance magnates Rachel McIntosh. Hi Rachel, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
It's great to have you on with us as per usual. So we asked you to kind of highlight your top stories of the week from your site. So let's kind of go through them and take the time to hear what you think of them and kind of just what's going on in general. So this first story here, everybody is now all in on, are we in alt season yet? And I really love this headline is, will Bitcoin's 70% dominance soon give way to an alt season? So I assume you think no, but please break it down for us.
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. You know, there's this theory in the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets that whenever Bitcoin is doing well, after a certain point, Bitcoin will sort of give way into a flood into the altcoin market. So basically people will buy up Bitcoin, it'll get really high, the dominance will grow, and then they'll sell that Bitcoin or trade it in exchange for altcoins. And that's what a few analysts are thinking about might happen sometime soon, since Bitcoin has been now for a couple months at 70% dominance, which was quite high. It hasn't been that high since July of 2017. So could we see an alt season soon? Perhaps, but you know, a lot of analysts are sort of ignoring the fact that the cryptocurrency markets are changing. Things aren't the way that they were 2 years ago. The ecosystem is changing. There's more altcoins than ever now. There's also more institutional capital in Bitcoin than there has ever been before. There's interest in this backed launch that's happening, I believe, in November. All the buzz around these ETFs, although we'll get to that a little bit later, regarding that stuff. So things aren't quite the same as they used to. But one thing I really like, Willy Woo, cryptocurrency market analyst, who I think has done a brilliant job of creating methods specifically to analyze Bitcoin and cryptocurrency markets, rather than just taking like traditional investment analysis models and applying them to the crypto markets. He's kind of created unique models just for the cryptocurrency market. Thinks that altcoins have actually still not completely detoxed from this hype that we've seen in 2017. So alt season is maybe an exaggeration, to say the least.
Absolutely, and I think, we have our technical analyst Joe Saz, who comes on occasionally, and he was saying that he's absolutely not convinced just yesterday, just kind of based on what's going on, because we're not. 70% dominance, we're not that far off from there, where it's, what was it, last I checked, it was like 68% Bitcoin dominance. It's not that far off. And in a recent Binance research as well, it was kind of released in that way, is will that eventually happen? And it kind of, it feels almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Do you think that perhaps because we keep talking about this alt season that may be upon us, that we're sort of making it happen?
It could be. You know, the thing is that there is just so much institutional interest in Bitcoin right now, and Bitcoin specifically. People aren't, looking quite as much into ICOs. They're not, in most altcoin markets and most altcoins that have lasted over the last 2 years in a meaningful way, they don't move quite in the same way that they used to. The great thing about altcoins in the past for investors was that you could, put $100 into, X coin or whatever, if I'm just making up a name. And then it could increase in a short amount of time. It could double, it could triple, it could quadruple. But the markets, even in altcoins, don't move quite as much as they used to. Therefore, I think that, as Willy Woo said, there isn't kind of this we're not completely detoxed from the speculative hype, but it's less than it used to be in the past. So I don't think that there is quite as much drive amongst the general public to try out different altcoins and, see, okay, if I invest in ABC coin and I invest in DEF coin, maybe there'll be a big increase. And even though I'm not interested in the technology, I just want the ROI. Absolutely.
People are, that is kind of the sense, right? That people are looking into better projects, so to speak, or projects that do have their space in this sphere, and to actually develop and not just, oh, look, we can do this thing with, this is a use case with blockchain, we might as well go for it just because there's a hype around it.
It's blockchain, yeah. There's the insert button here, yeah.
Absolutely. So that hype is kind of going away. Yeah, perhaps, I mean, we still haven't forgotten the ICO bubble, and people are clearly still upset about it. So, I mean, we'll have to see, but it does feel like there's a little left to go before AltSeason actually ends up happening yet. But now shifting gears to this next story with the headline, Libra investment token vendors selling thin air. Please break it down.
Right. So we had a couple of Finance Magnates team members at the Ethereal conference in Tel Aviv over the weekend. A couple of weeks ago was Michael Pearl, our chief editor, and David Kimberly, another excellent cryptocurrency editor. And they were speaking with Tomer Barrel, who's COO, at Calibra. And basically asked about these projects that are popping up that claim to be selling tokens that, are built or are going to be built on the Libra ecosystem. And these tokens are already, there's already interest being generated around them. There's also capital being put into these tokens, but there is still no guarantee that the Libra ecosystem is going to launch. And even if it does launch, there's no timeline as of yet. We have this, initial promise, or not promise, but let's say a supposition of January 2020, looking now like that might be pushed back a little bit. But what I thought was really striking was that the COO, Tomer Barrel, said that, quote, if someone is selling them, meaning these tokens, it's on their own and it's their problem. So for me, that was a little bit of a red flag. I know we've seen a lot of red flags around some aspects of the Libra project, but it's, there's been a lot of trouble with regulators. And, at first Libra was saying, okay, we're going to go and be regulated by Switzerland, but then they hadn't actually contacted Swiss regulators. And now it's like, okay, this might be somebody else's, saying like, we're going to build these tokens on the Libra ecosystem, and it might not have anything to do with the Libra project. But I think that Libra still does have some responsibility, at least to make people aware that this is happening and that there is no affiliation between Libra and these projects.
Absolutely. And if anybody watched, for whoever watched David Marcus's testimony, you could kind of tell that that's where he was going. I think not as blatantly, but it was always like, but that's the wallet provider. And so if they choose to be with Calibra, yes, we are under those regulations. But if they choose, something, so it's always kind of shifting blame just to avoid that in general. But if we can, Vitalik Buterin, who was at Ethereal as well, and spoke, you touched on Libra a bit with BLOCKTV. His general sentiment was that Libra has something that we don't have, right? That the cryptocurrency and the sphere generally do not have, which is 2.5 billion users, and the sphere, or the people playing around in the sphere at this point, have experience, which is something that, do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think that, Libra is kind of playing, maybe not dangerous, but Libra is walking the line between saying we're a decentralized system and also, we're not really that decentralized, where we've got these 100 backers that are going to be the nodes. Like, it's basically going to be controlled by a group of people that we can select. Ethereum, on the other hand of the spectrum, is very decentralized, always pushing for decentralization. And there's a whole debate between Ethereum Classic and Ethereum, but still, compared to Libra, they're on pretty different ends of the spectrum. But I think Vitalik Buterin did have a point here that if the Libra ecosystem is willing to work with the Ethereum ecosystem, specifically, he said that we should be extending a hand to Libra, that we should be welcoming this project with open arms, simply because of the fact, as you said, that there are 2.5 billion users that don't, can you imagine how small of a percentage of those users actually own cryptocurrency right now? It's probably very, very small. But if this ecosystem launches, this could be a gateway into the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And I think Buterin was saying specifically onto Ethereum, this could be a great way to onboard new people into the Ethereum ecosystem.
Absolutely, and it seems like the new trend now. I think Binance picked up on the fact that Libra gets more buzz, and now that's their comparison when it comes to Venus and when it comes to their project. It seems like they're trying to be comparable to that space in particular because of the hype aspect, and also playing on this whole we have experience and they don't, and open arms aspect. It's interesting to see where that ends up going. But shifting gears for the last time here, you mentioned earlier the VanEck SolidX Bitcoin ETF that was pulled. Break it down, please.
Yeah, exactly. So this is actually the second time that the application for the VanEck SolidX Bitcoin ETF application has been withdrawn. The first time was earlier this year. Similar set of circumstances. It's like we're getting closer and closer to the final deadline. The SEC only has a certain amount of time that they can delay their decision until they have to make a final decision. So it seems like VanEck and SolidX do not want to see a denial happen. I think that would be, I think it's a smart move of them to withdraw this application before a denial can actually take place. And what we've seen recently is that Jay Clayton, who's the chairman of the SEC, went on CNBC a couple weeks ago and said there's still work to be done as far as building the ecosystem, building the custodial tools, building, preventative tools for market manipulation in Bitcoin markets and other cryptocurrency markets before a Bitcoin ETF can be launched on the market. So it seemed unlikely, at least, given that statement, that an approval was on the immediate horizon. And as well, we had this thing happen a couple of weeks ago where VanEck and SolidX launched this thing that they called a limited ETF, quote unquote, limited ETF, or a BTF, Bitcoin Trust Fund. Probably have the F part of that acronym wrong, but basically they used an SEC exemption 144A, to launch something sort of similar to an ETF. It wasn't available to retail investors, but it was a way for institutional investors who are, just itching to get into the cryptocurrency markets and into Bitcoin. It was a tool for that, but it was kind of a flop. I don't know if you remember, there was,
a flop. People were very much saying that, the buzz around that was, at least don't call it an ETF. I think was more the criticism there. But I am curious, because you said earlier that you think it's a smart move. And my first inclination was, they must be joking at this point. So why is it that you think that that was a smart move on their part?
Well, I think that it's a smart move. I mean, Gabor Gabaks, who is the, I think he's the CEO of VanEck. I might have that wrong. Please forgive me if I do. But he went on Twitter and said that Bitcoin ETF is still top priority. He said exactly those words. It's a top priority for VanEck and SolidX to get this approved eventually. So in my opinion, I see the fact that they saw, okay, it's probably not going to happen this time. And the media cycle and all of the drama that would follow an actual denial of a Bitcoin ETF application is going to be a little bit more, let's say, than if we just withdraw the application with plans to resubmit. This also gives the SEC a bit more time, once again, more and more time to work on their decision. It gives VanEck and SolidX more time to build up the necessary tools in order to do this. I think that, the SEC, if they didn't ultimately want a Bitcoin ETF to be on the market, it would have been denied outright a long time ago. I think the SEC is working, to some degree with these companies and with the cryptocurrency industry to get this launched, but they don't think that the industry is ready yet. And I think that it was wise of VanEck and SolidX to recognize that, to say, okay, if you need more time, we can give you more time. We're going to resubmit. And when it comes, it'll come. But I can see what you're saying also. It is getting a little bit ridiculous at this point. Like, it just, with the media cycle, it's like, oh, the decision is coming. Is it going to happen?
Well,
finally.
Just the attempt to continuously restart the clock. It's funny at this point. I mean, there's still 2 other ETFs. So, I mean, we're assuming that the SEC at least is treating these all, in the same way. So it's interesting whether, whether they potentially got advice from somebody within the SEC who was like, listen, we need you to restart this clock. We're not saying no. I mean, what was the consulting aspect there? Why is this the way you guys are going in a very public manner, continuously pull and resubmit, especially in such a close proximity of time? It's not like you were like, let's give this a year and see where this ends up going. I mean, it's pretty immediately. And then with the, it was the shutdown last time, it's kind of starting to become a PR nightmare at this point, I think, with those things. But it's interesting to see how they'll take it in the future, because I mean, there's a limited amount of time that they can do this ultimately. So let's see what happens with the 2 other ETFs that are there, and then eventually we'll have an update on VanEck one way or the other. Thank you very much, Rachel McIntosh, for joining us for Crypto Crunch. It was great to have you on. For all you folks at home, keep on watching at blocktv.com for more cryptocurrency and blockchain related news.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.